Many of us listen to a morning radio show, be it on AM, FM, satellite, or internet, and we think, that seems like fun. How nice it must be to be part of a team that gets together every morning, jokes around, and is off for the day by 10 a.m. But what happens if one member of the team is going through a personal hell and doesn't have it in her to keep pulling off the happy, perky morning show feeling? When Laura Cain, a key member of the renowned Jeff and Jer Showgram, was dealing with out-of-control chemical and alcohol addiction and a failing marriage as a result, she still had to be San Diego's lighthearted, upbeat voice 5 days a week. Well, 6 years clean and sober and still on the air daily, Laura tells us more about that lowest time in her life that led her to rehab. She'll also share the rise, fall, and rise again of her years in radio and how she got to be the sidekick on San Diego's most successful morning show for the last 20 years. All this and more with Laura Cain right after my public speaking tip of the week here on Full Speech Ahead, so stay tuned.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Free at last! Free at last! Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Each one of you has your own platform. Mine is a stage in a studio. Yours is wherever you are.
Welcome to Full Speech Ahead, the program where we look at communication in all its many facets with an emphasis on the spoken word. I'm your host, public speaking coach Milo Shapiro from Public Dynamics. Before we get to my guest today on being a very public figure while going through a personal tragedy, here's my public speaking tip of the week. One question that comes up when speaking to business audiences is, how personal should I get? Where's the line? On the one hand, it's weak speaking to just be an information parroter whom the audience doesn't get to know and they're more likely to disconnect from. On the other hand, I have seen oversharing, the infamous TMI, too much information, that leaves the audience feeling uncomfortable. Well, the latter is so frightening to a lot of speakers that they tend to err on the side of the first, the information parroter. And that's a shame, because there's lots of room for appropriate sharing before coming anywhere close to TMI. The first step is to acknowledge that it's okay for your listeners to learn about your non-work life, as long as you're not sharing details that would upset anyone with the story. Talking about family, hobbies, vacations, past jobs, interests, and the like are all fine, so long as you tie these stories to the material that you're there to present. For instance, I open one of my speeches, the one that I do on public speaking skills, with a story about my grandfather. It's light, humorous, and lets the audience get to know me a little bit better. And more importantly, the lesson of the story was about a time when my grandfather didn't get what he wanted because he didn't take the time to communicate it effectively, which leads well into my main speech. The story isn't overly emotional and it doesn't make anyone look bad. It just opens me up a little bit. Oversharing crosses into stories that include the following. Stories that can make you look bitter, like if you can't mention your ex without a distinct change in your tone, maybe you shouldn't tell that story. Stories that could cause you to cry in front of your audience. Notice I didn't say tear up a little. That might depend on the audience if it was okay. Stories that could give people in the audience reason to gossip with the facts you shared or hold those facts against you. And of course, stories that hit the big three: sex, politics, and in most cases, religion. Now, does that mean you can't tell a story and include a phrase like, last week when I was on the way to church? Of course not. That's fine. But if it was last week while I was on the way to the gynecologist, maybe then you're better off just saying on the way to a doctor's appointment. I watched one speaker one time share a story so emotional to him that he was weeping on and off through his whole presentation. The feedback afterwards was that the audience wasn't moved, they were uncomfortable, wondering if someone should go and comfort the person they were supposed to listen to. So the bottom line, let your audience learn a little more about you. It does humanize you as a presenter, and it makes it easier for them to relate to you and their material. So let them in a little. Speaking of allowing people to get to know you a little better, we're certainly going to do that with my guest, Laura Cain. So, on with this week's interview. My guest today is Laura Cain. Laura is part of the morning show team called Jeff and Jer, with Jeff Detro and Jerry Cizek, who have been a staple of the San Diego morning radio entertainment for over 25 years. Their current group includes 6 on-air personalities, most of whom have been through multiple stations together. Laura has been with them since 1993. The show is known for not always focusing on the funny, getting real sometimes, and listeners know a lot about the lives of these 6 people. Well, what happens when your world hits some serious rock bottoms, yet your life is exposed to the world? After struggling with her own personal struggles with chemical addiction and more, Laura came clean on the radio 6 years ago, and it changed her life. Together, we're going to look at the whole morning show experience and what it's like to be that public about something so private, and how to pick up the pieces when a show like that is suddenly off the air with 17 months behind you and no assurance that it's ever coming back. Laura, welcome to Full Speech Ahead.
Hi, thank you.
So, I want to go back a ways. There's so much to cover, but let's talk about how you ended up in it. If you think back to being a girl, what role did radio play in your life?
You know, it's so interesting you say that because I was just thinking about this the other day, how I was obsessed with radio at a very young age. I got, those recorders where they're kind of big and they have the big buttons
Sure,
and you push
a
play.
tape recorder for
yes,
cassettes.
Yes, I would record songs off the radio.
Oh, me
and
too.
Exactly.
Casey Kasem with them held right up against it.
And I'd listen. Do you remember Dr. Demento?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
I remember falling asleep to that at night and just listening to that. And then I would make my poor mother watch my different skits where I'd sing to music, and then I would be the DJ or the host, hosting these, and this is a new song from Peaches and Herb or whatever.
Peaches and Herb.
Whatever. I didn't know what I was doing.
Wow, dating us.
But I actually, I loved radio. I loved music. I guess I'm born with it.
So radio in general appealed to you because of the music side of it. Did you see yourself as maybe you wanted to be the DJ? Because that's not the experience you ended up creating for yourself.
No.
But did you want to be a DJ?
No. I wanted to be in entertainment somehow. At first I thought I wanted to be an actress. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I want to be a talent agent. And then when college was coming up, I'm like, well, now I really have to figure out what I want to be. I wanted to be a news anchor on TV. Then I managed to get a job, 2 part-time jobs. One of them was at Channel 8 as the production assistant for the editorial director. Mm-hmm. And then one was a weekend job doing traffic at Airwatch Traffic. I do traffic reports for a station in Hemet. I mean, they didn't really have any confidence in me because I was still so green.
Sure.
And then maybe 1 or 2 for one of the AM stations here in town, only on the weekends. And one
because
day,
there's such a need for traffic reports on the weekends in San Diego.
And in Hemet.
In Hemet, yeah.
It was just really, really ridiculous. And I had to be there really early in the morning.
To say nothing's happening again.
Exactly, and read the commercial, pretty much. But so one day, the manager of Airwatch Traffic said, hey, Cal Walker, who was their star, the guy that was up in the chopper every morning, he's going to be on vacation, and we need somebody to do traffic for the Jeff and Jer morning show for 2 weeks. And can you do it? And I'm like, no, I can't.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, no. Well, first I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so, because I don't know if I can. I mean, that's morning radio, morning traffic. I didn't think I had the chops, but of course I said, in my head I was saying no, but I said, blurted out yes. And so that was the first time I was on the air officially as myself that entire week. They slowed down my voice. They'd speed up my voice. They'd record me when I didn't know about it, and I was singing to a song on the air.
I remember that. I'm a long time
I know
listener
you
to those
are.
people. Laura and I first met back in '93 when she was, or '93, '94 when she was first with them, and I just thought she was such a good sport because they have been merciless with you at times.
And I thought it was because I just sucked. I thought I was horrible, absolutely horrible. So, and I wasn't in the same room with them. Airwatch Traffic was a whole different building. We would just send in reports, or it'd be live, but I'd just be across town. So after those 2 weeks were done, I'm like, I never want to see them again because I was mortified. It turns out they had this big event at some hotels. For some reason I went. And Jerry came up to me and he said, you're the Laura that was doing our traffic? We want you to do our traffic from now on. We thought you were great. And I was like, taken aback, stunned. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? And they're like, yeah, we're going to tell them this week that we want you to do our traffic from now on. And then the rest is history.
Back right after this.
Got photos that need improvement? Freshen your photo. Old family shots that have gotten damaged? Freshen your photo. Want someone or something removed from a picture? Freshen your photo. At freshenyourphoto.com, we turn the pictures you have into the pictures you want. Add muscle, lose weight, lighten face lines, whiten teeth, fix darker off-color shots. See before and afters from dozens of happy customers at freshenyourphoto.com. That's freshenyourphoto.com.
We are back with Laura Cain, who is a staple of the San Diego morning show, the Jeff and Jer Showgram. And we're talking about how, at this point, she moved from being the traffic reporter down the hall in a different room to being such an important part of every morning. You wouldn't feel like the same show without Laura and Tommy and Randy. It's a team effort. So let's talk about, how did you become a bigger part of the show?
So I was officially hired to work exclusively for them at that point at Q106. Still only doing traffic, still in a different room, but at least in the same building. And then they had a news guy. Well, the news guy that they had at Q106, he was a news guy.
Right. I remember that. He didn't fit in the feeling of the show.
No, and he took his job real seriously. You know, all power to him, but we were like a wacky morning show, and half the time they blow him off just because we went long on a segment or we were having too much fun or something, and he was furious. So then they started having me do some of the news reports, like here and there. I'm still not good at it. I mean, I'm better at doing entertainment reports, but I'm not really good at being like a serious news person, but...
Well, I think they made it part of the play of the show is, here's Laura, good luck with the news.
Good luck,
yes.
Exactly.
And then they would stop and interrupt you and correct you.
Exactly.
But it became part of the fun of the show,
right,
rather than, oh, poor Laura. And you were, at least from my point of view as a listener, a really good sport about it.
I mean, I was just grateful at that point, you know, and I'm like, God, thank God this is not like CBS New York.
Yeah, right, because you can't say Franklin Delano Roosevelt there and get away with it.
Or what was the other one? Heifer instead of heifer for a cow. Oh my, there are many things that I've said wrong. Delano is probably the worst of all. But and then we just would be involved in different bits, radio segments, like fun things that we plan are called radio bits or whatever. I become more involved with them, and being the only girl for a lot of the years, I just became more and more involved in the show and the different skits that we do, or we don't do skits. What am I talking about? Like the different contests or the Battle of the Sexes.
Right, that was a big one. So as those things started to happen with the Battle of the Sexes, it was the men versus the women. Who was the other woman at that time? Oh, it was Jen. So we're going back a ways. Right?
At Q106, there was nobody.
Oh, it was just you?
It was just me, and that's when Randy came on board too. Randy started with them at Q106. Right. So, yeah, it wasn't until we went to B100.
You had callers
Star
who
100.
were your teammates
exactly.
as the women.
That's right. You remember more than I do.
Yeah.
Yes. And then, we were there at Q106 for 3 years, and then we moved back over to what was B100, but now it's Star 100 under different management. Mm-hmm. And we were there for 7 years, and that was like the height of everything, I think. It was just like the most money we ever made. I think the most famous we ever were is that like during that time.
How do you walk the line of, oh, I've got an idea. Oh, wait, this isn't my show. How do you figure out where the difference between being part of the team is and the fact that in the end, it's still very much the Jeff and Jer show?
Exactly that. You just have to keep your ego in check. I've always been able to really do that. And only because I feel like what I do isn't like super special. I think it's fun and it's important to make people happy in the morning and stuff, but I really, like I said, I don't take myself too seriously. I think that A is putting your ego in check. B, yeah, it's the Jeff and Jer show, and both Tommy and I and Randy, we know our place. I'm best at being a foil. I'm best at supporting the team. I am not the star of the show, and I know that, and that works.
That doesn't bug you? To feel like you don't have your moment to shine?
No,
not at all.
The better we can make them sound, the better we are all sound. Yeah. You know? And just knowing that when I say something, if I have to break in or interrupt, it better be important or funny, or else, just stand back. A lot of times in the studio, you don't see this, but they make fun of me. But they'll be talking, and if I really want to interject something, instead of interrupting, I raise my hand. And I'll raise my hand, and I'll go, oh, and then Jeff will see me, so he could. So I'm not blurting things in. I just try to be polite.
It makes sense, because that way they know and they can lead into it if need be. How about when one of them is out and you kind of step up more to behalf of the show a little bit more?
Right.
At least that's how it feels from listening.
Well, yeah, I mean, because Jeff is used to leaning on Jerry. Jerry is used to leaning on Jeff. When one of them is gone, they need someone to lean on, someone to be the backboard. That would be me stepping in, and Tommy to some extent.
When we come back after this another 30-second break, we're going to talk about what happens when life isn't going well on the outside and you still got to show up and be perky and happy on a morning show in a major city. So we'll be back in 30 seconds with that story.
Not another boring conference.
Liven it up with IMPROVentures and the fun of improvisation. Check out motivational speeches and entertainment that get everyone learning through play and laughter. For smaller groups, Teamprovising is our teamwork and communication program with more feedback and fun. Plus public dynamics, keynotes, training, and coaching on public speaking skills. You can be more effective in front of groups. Learn more today.
IMPROVentures, 619-542-0761, or see videos at IMPROVevents.com.
And we're back with Laura Cain, a member of the team on the Jeff and Jer Showgram here in San Diego, California. And we are now going into a segment where we're going to talk about how you got through the low point in your life and dealt with it so publicly. So let's go back a little bit.
I was struggling with substance abuse and alcoholism for, I'd say, pretty much most of my young adult life. It got really, really serious the years 2005 and 2006.
So that's a long time that you were keeping it together through that.
Yeah, but again, like I said, I wasn't hardcore. I drank every single night, but I thought that was normal. As far as using the drugs, that was kind of sporadic until those last 2 years, 2005, 2006, where I really became addicted to various substances and pretty much all of the above, and alcohol. And when I was starting to drink alcohol, the minute I got off the show, that became a problem. When I'd have to pop a couple pills and do a line before going into work, so I'd be somewhat normal, not too high, not too low.
That strike that balance, you could hold it together to get through the hour for 4 hours.
Because I was talking about, being, I'm married and family, and, that we did this with the kids the other day, and da-da-da. And the minute I'd get off the air, I'd be, across the street smoking a cigarette, calling my drug dealer. Completely.
Wow.
And, when you're in that vortex, it's like I just didn't know how I was ever going to get out. There's no way I could go to rehab. I knew I needed it. I knew I needed it 2 years. I knew I needed it. But I was way too embarrassed. It was shameful. It was awful. So one day, my third day that I had called in sick to work in the morning, I was fighting with my then husband. I was so frustrated. I was coming down from these substances. I didn't realize it, that I was in withdrawals, because I was...
Were you trying to stop?
No, they had been taken away from me because my ex-husband had found them.
Oh.
So I was feeling really ill, and I really didn't know what it was all about. Now, looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was in total major withdrawal. So we were fighting, and I just blurted out of desperation, you know what, I'm just going to kill myself. And I hid in the closet. And then I got in the shower, and about 15 minutes later, there were the cops knocking on the door.
And are the kids home through this?
They had just left for school, thank God.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that was not burned into their memory, because I'm sure the neighbors saw me in handcuffs.
Wow.
Walking across my cul-de-sac to a police car, that was the lowest point of my life.
Let me take you back to that moment a little bit. When you're in the closet, are you feeling like, okay, this is where it's all going to change, or are you still not getting that?
I'm still not getting that, because I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought he was just going to ignore me like he had been doing. Oh, and I don't blame him, because I was probably a nightmare to live with. And I was on the phone with my best friend, and she's like, Laura, she said, Laura, this is where things are going to change now. I think she even said that. I really do. But again, my mind was still kind of fuzzy back then. Anyway, so they took me to a county mental health, where I was in lockdown for 72 hours. I was off the air for 3 months. And the company line Well, first let me tell you this. This
yeah,
is how cool.
Well, did they know about it?
Okay. So obviously I didn't show up for work the next day. Tommy was the first person that...
And we haven't said Tommy's the producer of the show.
Tommy is the producer of the show, and he's like my best friend. He was the first one who was at the mental hospital holding my hand saying, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. Me crying, saying, what am I going to do? Oh my God, I'm going to be fired. They're going to hate me. I'm so embarrassed. Don't worry about it, Laura. Don't worry about it.
From the 72 hours?
Yeah, he managed to get in. Like, nobody else came to visit me, but Tommy came to visit me. Yeah. So, when I left for Hazelden, which is in Oregon, Jeff showed up at the airport. Jerry showed up. My boss, Bob, showed up. Emily showed up. Tommy showed up. Randy showed up. Like, it was so sweet.
Wow.
The sales manager showed up just to say goodbye. So I was like, oh my gosh, this means so much to me that they believe in me and that they're here and they're not like just kicking me to the curb. So the official line on the air was that I was dealing with family issues. And a lot of people, I guess, guessed that was what was going on. And a lot of people, because I guess I talked about drinking quite a bit, always on the air.
You always talk about Chardonnay.
Oh my gosh, I know. Yes, Chardonnay was my demon, was the thing I liked the most. But anyway, when I was at Newport, that was my sober living facility, Tommy had sent me a box full, a giant stack full of emails from our listeners that I sat and I read when I was in this patio setting with some of my friends in rehab, and we were reading through these emails, and people were so nice. And some of them guessed, some of them didn't know, but were like, we miss you, we hope you're okay. And I felt so supported, and I knew that, okay, I am a mom of 2 kids on the radio living the supposed good life. I am not the only mom of 2 kids living the good life who has an addiction problem. I was in rehab with PTA moms, doctors, a Mormon with 7 kids, you name it, police officers. So I was like, you know what? I am not the only one. I have to tell my story because this is why I have this outlet, and this is why it happened in this way. And I have to talk about it. I have to be honest about it because I know I can help other people. So when I came back on the air, it was June 26th.
Before we get to that, did you know the whole time that they were waiting for you and your job was okay, or did you question it?
Yes, because I always had Tommy to communicate with.
That must have given you a lot of strength knowing that.
Yes, and they wrote me letters, all of them. I knew that my job was still there.
Okay, so June 20th, what year?
2007.
June 20th, okay.
And so I just read a letter.
On your first day back?
Uh-huh.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that first day or not.
Yeah. Well, because I had to, I'm like, gosh, they wanted me to write a letter. I said, why a letter? Why can't I just talk about it? And then when I wrote that letter, it explained so much, and the way I read it and what they did, it was perfect because I was able to say everything without forgetting anything by just blurting it out. I just read this big letter, what happened, where I was. When I was in rehab, I lost my marriage. I lost my house. I almost lost custody of my kids. Through the months following rehab, I got back my custody of my kids pretty quickly. I was living with Tommy at the time for 6 months until because I had no money, I had no bank account. Things changed dramatically. The hardest part wasn't rehab. It was coming back from rehab and dealing with the wreckage of what I had left behind, which was a lot. So yeah, I'm actually still putting the pieces together, but in a good way. I mean, it's just my life completely changed. I'm not with this person I was with for more than half my life. I was married for 16 years, knew him for 5 years before that. That's all I ever knew.
Yeah, so to always have someone to lean on to suddenly not only be single, but be single and in recovery at the same moment.
Right.
But it sounds like you had a lot of support.
Yeah, and even now, I'm so thankful that everybody does know my story because it keeps me sober, and it keeps me healthy, and it keeps me honest.
Have you had people reach out to you because of your being so public about their addiction?
All the time, and
I didn't ask that knowing because I hadn't planned it with you. I just had a feeling.
Sometimes they email me. Sometimes, they'll call the show, and Tommy will take the call, and then I'll call him back. That's exactly. I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be leading these people to help. I often invite them to a meeting that The one meeting that I attend regularly is on Monday nights, the women's meeting. It's awesome. I love it. I'm now the secretary of the meeting. But a lot of listeners I've met, and now they've become really good friends of mine, and sisters in sobriety. And
do you have a resource just in case someone's listening and this is the moment and they decide, like, who should they reach out to? If they're listening to this going, oh my gosh, that's me too.
Well, first I want to say me, because I won't judge you. But at the same time, if you've reached that point, just be honest with your family. You know, as long as you're honest and you're willing, if you've reached that point, and you know that point, when you're there, you know. Your family, you will find support. Don't be embarrassed, don't be ashamed. It happens to a lot of people, and you can overcome it. You can. It's not easy, but it's so much better. Oh my gosh. My relationship with my kids is so solid and so deep. I am so happy that I haven't been drunk these last 6 years.
What you would have missed out with
Totally.
Charlie and the things he's been through.
Because all you do is think about, where's my next fix? Where's my next drink going to come from? Instead of having those thoughts like, what's Charlie doing right now? What is he learning in school? You know?
Yeah.
And Evan and my daughter Evan. Yeah, being sober is just awesome.
That feels like where I should wrap up the show, and yet the problem with teasing something is you have to at least talk about it, otherwise you did it for nothing. So I've got to ask you, you were back and things were good.
Things were really good.
And taking off and suddenly...
Okay, first making the most money I'd ever made.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, our contract was up. We weren't renewed.
And how much foresight did you have that was coming?
None.
Wow.
We were at work, and Tommy comes in the studio during a commercial, and he says, I think we're being laid off today. And we're like,
today?
What?
Wow, that is no notice.
No. So each one of us called upstairs, and we had to, sign the papers and all that kind of stuff. But we thought, all right, maybe 3 months.
Because you were the Jeff and Jer Showgram.
Right.
Of course you were going to land on your feet.
Right. And the 17 months happened because we were trying different things. Jeff and Jer were trying various different things. Maybe trying to own their own station, or maybe online, or there were different ideas.
Maybe.
Yeah, yes. Syndication was one of the ideas. Through a lot of effort, and things just kept falling through. In a matter of months, the pay grade for doing what we do went from up here to way down here, and nobody was offering way up here anymore, no matter what. But then, we're coming up on a year, and we're like, okay.
And that's 6 of you out of work.
Yeah. I worked at a flower shop for 1 week. No, 2 weeks. I worked at Dave's Flower Box for 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is hard. And so finally, our boss, Bob, who we've worked for before, from Kixie, met with Jeff and Jer and said, hey guys, you need to be back on the air. We want you to be back on the air. This is what we can offer you right now. And boy, was it a gut punch. It was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? How am I? We all had to make some major, major adjustments. I had to move. Jeff had to downsize his house. We had to sell cars, do this, do that. But it's been awesome. It's been so good being back on the air. And so that was 2 years ago, and we just got a 3-year contract. And
Great.
I spend more time with those people than anybody else in my life. And, we've been through birth, death, divorce, rehab, depression, so many things, injury, surgeries. We are truly a family.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Laura, I want to thank you for being my guest today on Full Speech Ahead. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Milo. And Milo, you're like my best listener, one of my best, dearest friends. And thank you so much for believing in us as a show and still listening to us through all the years.
My pleasure. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Family isn't the right place for everyone. She's Laura, spelled the usual way, at kyxy.com. If you enjoyed this episode live, it'll be on my website for replay by tomorrow to share with others, along with many other interviews I've done and posted at fullspeechahead.com. If you'd like to get notices for my other upcoming Full Speech Ahead shows and see more tips on public speaking, you can also check out that same site for information about my coaching and training in public speaking for you or your work team. I'm also available for my team building course, Teamprovising, where we use games of improvisation to look at teamwork, creativity, and communication. More on that also at miloshapiro.com. And with that, I am Milo Shapiro, always moving full speech ahead. Till next time.